Hello, welcome to the latest episode of The Success Formula with Ray Williams. And my name is Matthew Chan, and I'm happy that you've joined us for this latest episode. And Ray today is going to continue the subject that we talked in the previous episode, how to become a more powerful person in your life. How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing great, Matthew, and glad to be back and continue our series.
Yeah, well, so anyway, as I understand it, we ran a little short on time, and we didn't cover all the great tips and techniques and strategies that I guess you wanted to share with our audience regarding becoming a more powerful person. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And just to do a bit of a recap from last time,
that's right.
What I talked about in the last segment was there are things that hold you back from being a really powerful person. And what we identified was, number one, was energy. And your ability to sustain your energy. And one of the ways to sustain it, or a number of ways to sustain it, is certainly to pay attention to exercise, to diet. And then there are things that steal energy from you, and that's being around energy vampires. We talked about that, right? It's being around people who are victims and drama queens and drama kings and people who are constantly complaining about being helpless and not being in control of their lives. So we identified some of those things. What I'd like to talk about today, Matthew, is a couple other features of becoming a more powerful person. People who don't have a sense of personal power are often resentful, and you probably run into people like this, and they're uncooperative. They're constantly negative and feeling like it feels like you're pushing them uphill, and it's a 20-pound weight on top of you, on top of being able to push them uphill.
Yes.
So what often happens to these people, Matthew, is that they become fearful. They're afraid of taking risks, and this is really important for entrepreneurs. They're afraid of taking that big step. They're afraid of making that decision to go into business, deal with a partner, to start a new product, to go into a new market. And fear and aggressiveness are the two things that prevent you from being a powerful person, because you're constantly in a state of, should I do this? Or you're in a state of over-aggression where you want to kill the competition. So both of those states actually rob you of personal power. So I wanted to start out by saying that, first of all.
Well, I certainly...
Second thing I want to talk about... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was basically saying that I definitely get what you're saying. I mean, it's what you're saying. When you say these things, it just jumps out at me, the different life experiences that different people have run into. So as far as I'm concerned, you're hitting the nail right on the head. So, but go ahead. Right.
So I'm going to use two examples of that. First of all, the person who's fearful. And I dealt with a client who was an entrepreneur. He's had several different kinds of businesses, and he was moving into starting up a communications service business, trying to find a niche and become a communications consultant. But he came from this place of fear because the previous business had gone downhill and he had hit bottom and he finally had to declare bankruptcy and it was gone. But he'd been around for quite a while.
Wow.
Right? So he was fearful of having now to go back into the world of business and admit to people that he had failed.
Oh.
He was afraid of contacting all his previous clients and all his previous customers and saying, you know what, I've started up something new here. And I think I've got something that's a really good idea. I'm going to make it work, and I'm contacting you as either a potential customer or a client or a vendor or whatever, and I want to be able to forge this business and move ahead. He was so fearful of doing that because of his previous experience.
I see.
So it held him back. It reduced his personal power, and the new initiative he started was also a failure. So start it all over again. So that's what I mean about fear can stop you from being a powerful person. The other example is that when you're too aggressive, that can also actually hold you back from being powerful. And we see this examples where people want to steamroll someone else. They want to crush the competition. So you're in competition with another person, and you may encounter this person at a meeting or a similar kind of a trade show or something like that. And they're focusing entirely on how good they are and how bad you are. That's the use of power in a destructive way. In other words, the only way I'm going to get ahead, Matthew, is if I step on your head. The only way I'm going to get ahead is if I crush you as the competition. And we see this in the corporate world all the time.
Yes, we do.
That also reduces personal power, because what happens is those people are not respected. Nobody wants to do business with them. And if they have an opportunity, they'll get even.
Yikes.
So that's a reduction of personal power as well. So that's what I mean about fear and aggression actually reduce your personal power. And use those two examples.
Okay.
The next thing I want to talk about is the thing that gives you the greatest sense of being powerful in your life is being in control of your life. Being in control.
All right.
When you think about it, think about those times in your life, Matthew, where you felt like, you know what, I'm not in control of my life here. I'm not really in control of my business. What did you feel like?
You didn't feel too good. I can honestly say that from personal experience. It's very easy to relate to.
Right. And did you feel personally powerful at that moment?
No, I didn't. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it at all.
So one of the greatest contributions to being a powerful person is having a sense of control in your life. You know, I'm in control of my personal life. I'm in control of my business. I'm in control of my profession. It's all the same thing. So then the question becomes is, what do you do to develop more control?
Okay.
So that's what I want to talk about a little bit, is what the things you can do to develop more control. So some people have some takeaways here that they can incorporate into their own lives and their business. So, number one.
All right.
It's the power to choose. It's the power to make a choice in your life. You always have a choice. You had a choice, that first girlfriend you had in high school, right? To go out with her or not.
Well, in my case,
or maybe she had a choice.
Anyway.
Anyway, everybody has a choice in life, even in their personal life. Am I going to go out with this person? Am I going to marry them? Are they going to be my partner in life? It's all the same thing, right? Okay. When we take the position that we don't have a choice, that you're only on the receiving end,
yes,
they will decide.
Yes.
That person will decide whether I have a relationship. That person will decide whether I'm in a date or not. That person will decide where I'm going to live. That person will decide whether we're going to have children. Then you lose power. You start to lose power incrementally through time because you've now lost the power of choice. Same thing in your business. You've been a multiple entrepreneur in a number of businesses. Every time you decide to make a choice as to an initiative, including this great TV series you're doing with all these experts, you're making a proactive choice which adds to your personal power.
Well, thank you very much.
As opposed to someone coming to you and saying, Matthew, we're going to do this. Would you like to be part of that or not? You don't have the same sense of proactive control over that, do you?
That's correct.
Because you're on the receiving end.
You're
on the receiving end.
That's
so
right.
You can only accept or reject what's given to you. So the more we can introduce the concept of choosing what to do in our lives, the more you build personal power. So that's another element.
Yes, very good.
Okay. A third element is taking responsibility for your life and the choices you make. How often have you heard... we touched on that before. So I'm going to expand the notion of personal responsibility. Think about the first business that you had that didn't go so well.
Yes. I'm thinking.
That was a long time ago, wasn't it? We don't have to get into details. We've all had those. Or the first date in life that didn't go so well. or the first family dinner with the collected family didn't go so well. And when we think about what happened at that particular event or that experience, where's the natural place that we have a tendency to go?
We lay blame.
To blame someone else.
Yeah,
blame someone else, right? Was not my fault.
Right, they did it.
Yeah. Exactly.
They did this to me.
So every time, yeah, it made me. Every time we say that, you reduce your personal power. So you apply it in business, and I use another case in point about a client I've had. Is this business person was a vice president of a very large company that was producing railroad parts for the railroads. Huge company. He got the company went into a slow business during the recession, and they decided to reduce the number of vice presidents. So they give him his package. He'd been there for 24 years. So he decided, well, what I'm going to do is the likelihood of me being hired as a 55-year-old vice president with only that kind of experience is very small. I'm going to start up my own business. So what he did was I'm going to choose to start up my own business, and he developed a niche to develop one particular railroad part that only one other company in the world was producing. And that particular part was, those the pins, the stakes that go in when they put the rails in along the wooden cross pieces.
Okay.
And they've got to secure the rail. Well, he developed an automated process to develop these stakes using a machine that would just go along and pound them in at 1/10 the amount of time. And it was using a particular machine that would create this particular stake that used water to cut it absolutely precisely instead of heat. And so he developed this machine and used it just using water.
Wow.
And it can actually make anything. Anyway, the reason I'm kind of going on and on about the story is that what he said was, I could sit back, take my package from this company, and maybe sit back on my pension and take it easy for a while, not have to. Or I could start a new initiative that I have some control over, that I'm making a choice about, realizing that there's some risk here. The first 2 years of his new company, made no money. The third year, he just barely paid all his bills.
I see.
The fourth year, 10% profits. The fifth year, 30% profits.
Wow.
So, because he had made this particular choice. So here's a case in point where he took responsibility for what happened to him, even though it was delivered to him, and say, you know what? I'm choosing not to go that route. And he had never been an entrepreneur before, Matthew. It's his first time.
That's amazing. That really. So
that's amazing. An example. Yeah, it's amazing. He's never been happier, even though he started at 55 years old being the first time entrepreneur.
That's great.
So that's an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, I want to move on to a fourth point, which I think is absolutely critical here, and that is you can't decide how to make these choices in your life to be a more powerful person. This is the mistake people make.
Okay.
They focus on the how before they focus on the what.
I think
we've talked about this before.
That is very common, Ray.
Very common. So let me use the example of this railroad parts guy that I was talking about.
Okay.
If he had retired and taken that package and said, you know what, I think I'm going to start up a business, but I don't know how to start up a business. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a bunch of courses on how to be a small business owner.
Yes.
And most of those courses and most of the stuff you read all focuses on the how. How to do financing, how to go to the bank, how to do a business plan, how to do whatever. Right? It's all how-tos. How to run an office, how to have an employee payroll system.
Yes.
Here's the problem with all that. You haven't decided what you're going to do.
That's correct.
What is it that he wanted to do? He wanted to establish a unique business that fit into the niche of a much larger business in the transportation industry, and he wanted to be able to focus on what that might look like that was very unique and very innovative. That's all what. It's all the what's. So he spent the first 3 months just brainstorming and researching about what this product and service could be that nobody else is providing, but also could connect with all the other products and services that are already in the marketplace, so it fit very nicely within it. Isn't this what Google does all the time now? They think about the next product. They think about the next service they can provide that's attached to the current products and services, but are very unique and innovative at the same time.
That's correct.
So that's an example by what I mean. So the 3 steps that are absolutely necessary for an entrepreneur to be able to become a powerful person in their business is to be able to take these 3 steps in this order.
All right.
Number 1, decide what it is you want to do. Make a decision and don't equivocate.
Okay.
So a good example is you, Matthew. You decided you wanted to do this video series.
That's correct. And I know who I wanted to go to work with.
Right. But you didn't kind of do all the research on all the how-to stuff before you decided what you wanted to do. The what came first. Hey, this is a really cool idea. I could get these guys and these women and bring them in as experts and produce this great video series, and I think it would be a really innovative idea. Your first step was not to research, I wonder what the video software is going to be, and you started there. That's not where you started. You started on the idea. That's correct.
And actually, I started locally, and I eventually expanded to remotely, which is where you obviously came in.
Exactly. So that's why it's so critical. You made a decision about what you wanted. Now you've just automatically increased your personal power by doing that.
Well, thank you.
As opposed to thinking about, I wonder how I could do this. As soon as you go to the how, before you've decided the what, you decrease your personal power. Okay, step number 2 is then you talk about, how am I going to do this? I got this great idea. Now, how am I going to go about and do it? And then that's where you investigated the video technology. Well, I wonder what video technology we could use. What are the various alternatives? Which would work best? What's the cheapest? What's the highest quality? And you looked into all those things.
Yes.
And then you took the 3rd step, and that's you developed an action plan. So those 3 steps, you'd be surprised, Matthew, how many entrepreneurs do not understand. They do not understand. You must use those 3 steps.
Yes, you're really correct, Ray. I mean, a lot of people get frozen up, and I learned a long time ago that as long as you've got just enough to go, and you figure out things as you go along and you improve things. But the last thing you want to do is just lose time. To me, that's the finite resource. You lose a year, you'll never get that year back. And definitely getting up and go, deciding what you're going to do and go and figure it out along the way.
Right. And today I'm talking quite a bit about entrepreneurs because I think there'll be a lot of people watching the program in that category. You always have to balance, as you know, you have to balance working on the business with working in the business.
Can you elaborate on that?
Working on the business means that you're constantly thinking about what's my new initiative going to be? What's my new marketing idea is going to be? How am I going to rebrand myself so that I look a particular way in the marketplace? How am I going to launch this? It's more the visionary, creative, innovative thinking process.
Yeah.
That's when you're working on the business. How am I going to position myself compared to my competition? Working in the business is, oh my God, look at all these bills on my desk. Where's my accountant? Right?
Yeah.
Where's the fulfillment company? They didn't deliver the product in time. I've got these orders to send out. So there's always that balance when you're an entrepreneur working on the business versus in the business. The experience that Stephanie Frank and I've had in working with entrepreneurs, the ones who have failed, and as you know, 85% of startup new businesses fail within the first 3 years.
Is that right? Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
85%. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very dramatic. And at the same time, it's small business that's fueling the economy right now. It's not large business.
And what they tell me.
Different jurisdictions are different.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's where people are hiring. That's where money is being produced. That's where taxes are being paid. It's not the large corporations. GE, General Electric, hasn't paid any corporate income tax in 5 years. Okay?
Yeah.
Can you tell me you haven't? No, I'm not going to get into that. Right? So small business, in many ways, is going to be the thing that drives us out of the recession and brings the economy back to a very, very solid place. It's not the large companies. Okay, so when you take a look at then small businesses, and they want to be successful, and they have to work in the business and on the business, this is how it links to being a more powerful person. You become a more powerful person as an entrepreneur when you understand you have to do both at the same time. Where entrepreneurs fail and why their businesses fail is they don't have a management system in place. They don't have a management system. They don't know how to manage their business internally, and they don't know where to put their time and energy with respect to which is going to have the biggest payoff for me. And in the next segment, we're going to actually be talking about how to develop your strengths, because it's clearly connected to this. Okay. So, for example, if you take a small business owner, how do you decide where you put your energy and your time?
For me,
how do you decide?
Well, Ray, it is an ongoing struggle. Like, for example, us doing this show, to me, the most important part of this was getting people like you, getting the talent, and let's start producing. It was the most important. And actually, I've already had a couple of discussions like, oh, how are you going to make money from this and all that. I was like, you know what? That is not my concern. My concern right now is to get the shows going, get the talent, let's get this ship going. Let's make things happen. Let's go change the world. Really, that was my thought. Let's go teach. Because, I was really passionate about giving people, the unknown person, that doesn't have ties to Oprah and traditional media, a platform. And that, I felt that there was a need for that, and I was going to do that at all costs, even if I had to fund it. Self-fund it. So, in that regard, that was, when you're starting up, you really think about the mission. Now, for a more mature type of business like my real estate, okay, we've already figured out the management and all that. My thing is, which I've decided in the last year or so, is to make it no drama. I'm not interested in growth mode. I just want to keep that on autopilot so I can work on this particular project. So I guess I'm getting a little long-winded here. Didn't mean to, but how I decide is really it really is dependent on the project. And I have to admit to you, Ray, the love for the project also has a huge influence. I have to tell you. So when you have a love, you definitely will willing to throw yourself into it. Whereas if you don't have a love, you kind of back away. So I don't know if that is what you're looking for. But I gave you a couple of examples.
That's exactly.
I looked at it.
Yeah. What you demonstrated there is actually one of the elements of being a powerful person. It's deciding where you put your energy and your time. So for a lot of entrepreneurs that they're not successful and they're not powerful people, it's because they devote their energy and time to the wrong things. They don't have a management system. They don't know how to balance working on the business and in the business. And what they end up doing is they don't learn also how to delegate. So what you've just demonstrated is you could have done this show all yourself. Well, listen, I'll do the show all myself, and I'll be the expert and also produce it and put it out there. Okay? But you didn't do that. You said, you know what? I need to delegate the part that maybe I'm not as good at as somebody else could be from this particular angle, and why not have them do that work for me, and I'll just leverage that for my business, and we'll see where that goes.
Well,
so what you've just demonstrated is
you make it sound so crass. I mean,
not crass at all. We're talking
liking you and respecting you does have some play into it, you know. But yeah,
yes, I realize that.
But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So learning how to leverage your time and energy is what a powerful person does. It's what a powerful person does. All the way from the President of the United States down to someone who's cleaning floors in a building. They say, you know what? How am I going to get this job done the easiest way possible with the least amount of energy that has the biggest amount of results?
That's right.
Right?
That's correct.
So that janitor in the office building doesn't get down on his hands and knees and start cleaning the floor with a paper towel.
No.
Right? Right? He's going to leverage it. So leverage applies to everything in life. It applies to everything. It also applies to personal relationships. How am I going to leverage my personal relationships so I have the biggest result in my personal relationship? So if I'm working on a personal relationship, I know in the case of my wife, who I've been with for 41 years,
that's amazing.
The biggest leverage that I have, and you've met her, the biggest leverage I have is showing her that I care about her, I love her, and that I will support her with non-judgment every single day of my life. I'm leveraging my relationship when I act that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd make that decision. I figure out how am I going to do that? Well, one of the ways, this is the 3 steps again, right?
Mm-hmm.
I made a decision. Mm-hmm. I then talk about how am I going to do it? Well, the way in which I'm going to do it is every day I'm going to say how much I appreciate her and love her. Say it verbally. Show her. Every day I'm not going to voice any kind of criticism or judgment of her, or the way she is, because she's not perfect or doing things my way. Leverage number 2. And then number 3...
all the women are in love with you just now. I mean, they're going to say, I want this little clip. They're going to take this little snippet and play it for all their boyfriends and husbands now. But go ahead.
Well, we may do something strictly on relationships. That'll be good. But you understand what I'm saying? So the principle applies everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was referring to you about leveraging and making a decision about where you want to spend your time, you were doing that in a very intelligent way. And that adds to your personal power. So you become a more powerful person as a result. Anyway, so I wanted to expand those examples, Matthew, to really emphasize the point. So just go back and summarize what we've talked about today. I know we're getting close to our time.
We're fine.
Okay. I wanted to summarize those points is that people who are not powerful, who lose their personal power, are people that are, number 1, fearful. They're afraid to take risks because they're afraid of what's going to happen, and every time you do that, you become less powerful. Okay. Number 2 is they focus on aggressive power, where in order to win, it's at someone else's expense, instead of using influence and persuasion. And that's the next thing I want to talk about as part of personal power, is using influence and persuasion.
Okay.
There's a difference between power versus force. Force means I'm a powerful person at your expense. I will do this and make you do it, or else, or I'll just go over top of you. And that's true of a country versus as well as an individual in business.
That's right.
Right? That's force. Force is not the same as power. Personal power comes from within, and it's not destructive. So influence and persuasion, then, is linked to personal power. So how do you become a more influential and persuasive person? Let me ask you that question. Who would you identify as being really influential and persuasive in a way that you want to do something for somebody?
You mean some real life examples?
Yeah, a life example. Who would you identify?
Well, I have to say, yeah, I do. You're one of those people.
No.
I mean, I've seen, seriously.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen you live in person and interact. Now, of course, I do have, the traditional role models that a lot of people have that are famous, like, I don't know, like Bill Gates. He seems to be very influential, even though he's very soft-spoken. It's like what he says carries a lot of weight. Steve Jobs. It just seems like, when they speak, there's just a lot of gravitas, and I respect that a lot.
Right. Well, here's some things about influence and persuasion that lead you to being a powerful person as well. I'm just going to mention a couple of them, because then we have to watch the time. Number one, to be a really influential person, you have to be able to connect and have really positive relationships with people. You have to be able to personally connect with people, which means that you have to be really interested in them and not always focused on yourself.
Okay.
And you'll notice that people who are always focused on themselves, you don't really want to spend a lot of time with them. They're not really influencing you in a lot of... They're really influential people have a genuine interest in the other person, in you.
I see.
One of the things they said about Bill Clinton, whether you like him as a president or you're a supporter of Democrats or not, he had this amazing capacity to be able to connect with people personally. It didn't matter who he was with. He had this magnetic way of focusing in on the other person, so they felt, wow, I'm the only person in the room here. Ronald Reagan had the same ability. So it didn't really matter the politics, the same kind of person. John F. Kennedy had the same kind of ability. Martin Luther King had that ability. So I'm just mentioning really famous people.
Yes.
So what leads to personal power through influence is the ability to connect with somebody and say, you know what, you're really important, and I'm noticing you. Okay?
That's right.
Number two thing that adds to influence and persuasion is there's a thing in your brain called mirror neurons.
All right.
We have neurons in our brain that when you see someone who is like you, you think they're great.
So is that right?
Sure. We tend to like people who are a bit like us. It's much harder to like somebody who is not like you. So if you see somebody that's kind of mirroring a bit of the way you are, you're drawn to this person, and they have the ability to influence you a lot more.
That's interesting.
And we're going to do a segment on expanding influence and persuasion. So, for example, if I was sitting across from you, and you were sitting a certain way and tilting your head a certain way and talking a certain way, if I start doing the same thing, you will start to feel like, hey, this is a pretty nice guy. Because you're looking in the mirror. You're looking in the mirror. That's why. So it's a thing called mirroring the other person. And good Hollywood stars and politicians and psychologists and people who do the kind of work I do, we've learned and become trained in knowing how to do that. And that's how you make a connection with somebody. Then you can become a lot more influential.
That's great. Okay. Well, as we wind this episode, are there any other last points you want to quickly make to wrap this show up? Thank you, Matthew. I think only that one of the things that's really important to become a really powerful person is to be yourself and to be really authentic and not put on some kind of an act or performance where you pretend you're somebody. Agreed.
Just because you want to impress someone.
That's correct.
And, we've all met those kind of people that are constantly trying to impress you. And you have a tendency to actually pull back and withdraw from those people. And then they become less influential, and then they're actually not becoming really powerful people. So we're drawn to powerful people because they do the things that make them powerful. They have control over their lives. They make powerful choices. They get rid of energy drains in their life. They make sure that they take responsibility for their choices in life, and they stop being a victim and complaining.
Right.
You do all those things together, you increase your power significantly.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Ray. In wrapping this up, just a couple of my thoughts is that for you viewers, I think you're going to appreciate what Ray is saying, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Now, if you're not an entrepreneur, that's okay. It's just that obviously the audience that I generally attract are entrepreneurial types. Now, also, just to remind you that this was the second part that was started of a discussion that began on a prior episode. So you'll want to look up for that. In any case, Ray, I appreciate you spending time with me this afternoon and doing this episode. And you viewers, thank you for your valuable time. And we hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.
Bye for now.